Hey everyone, today we work on the Canadian Computer Computation Test, year 2018, junior problems, problem J3. Are we there yet? Now let's read the problem. So we're driving on a very straight road, and on this road there are 5 cities, and during the travel we record the distance between each pair of consecutive cities. So we know the distance of any two cities next to each other, and you'd like to calculate a distance table that indicates the distance between any two of the cities you have encountered, which means, so here we know the distance between any two cities next to each other, and we have 5 cities, so there are 4 distance numbers. What we need to do is to build a distance table contains the distance between any two of the cities, and these two cities can be the same one. So we are basically building a 5 by 5 matrix. The input specification, so the first line we have 4 positive integers, and that's the distance that I recorded for the distance between any two cities next to each other. So let's say the first number is the distance between the first city and the second city. The second number is for the distance between the second city and the third city, and so on. So in the output, and there should be 5 lines, and each line there are 5 numbers. That's the 5 by 5 matrix, and we have a sample input that is 3, 10, 12, 5. That's the distance numbers between any consecutive two cities. Then the output, this is a matrix of 5 by 5, and the first number is 0, as you can see. And this means that the distance between the first city and the first city is 0. It sounds a little bit weird, but that's the number here, y is 0. And this 3 is the distance between the first city and the second city. And this 13 is the distance between the first city and the third city. So you can see that's the sum of these 3 and 10, and so on. So this 25, that's the sum of these 3 numbers. This 30 is the sum of these 4 numbers. And you can also read the explanation here. And now we need to analyze the problem to understand it. Here what we have is a straight road. So we use a straight line for the road. And on this road, there are 5 cities. And we use this blue egg for a city. And we have C1, C2, C3, C4, and C5 for the cities. And we know the distance between each two cities next to each other. So the distance between C1 and C2, we use D1 for it. And between C2 and C3, we use D2, and so on. Now what we need to calculate is the distance table. So for the first city, we need to calculate the distance of C1 to C1, and C1 to C2, C1 to C3, C1 to C4, and C1 to C5. And for the second city, we need to calculate, okay, in this green lines, so we need to calculate the distance from C2 to C1, and C2 to C2, and C2 to C3, C2 to C4, and C2 to C5. And now, as you can see, if we know the location of each city, then the distance between any two of them could be calculated very easily. And now, let's say if the location of the first city is 0, and as we know the distance between the first city and the second city, so the location of the second city is 0 plus D1. and then the location of the third city is 0 plus D1 plus D2, and the fourth city is plus an extra D3, and then for the fifth city and plus an extra D4. And the location of the first city, it doesn't have to be 0. It doesn't matter you set it to be 10 or 100 or 10,000, that doesn't matter. We just use 0 to make it simpler. So now let's see how we do it in C++. So for any program, we have data process and we have the output. And now let's see the input. It is one line with 4 numbers. So the input is 4 numbers. And then in the data process, we need to have the locations for the 5 cities. So we basically need an array for the city location for the cities, and then we need to calculate the distance between any of the 2 cities. So as we use array here, so we basically need to loop through all the cities, and for each one of them we need to loop all the cities again to calculate the distance. And then the output is the 5 by 5 matrix of the distance between any 2 cities. So now we know what we need to do in the program. Now let's see how we should code it. So first, as we need to do the input and output, we need to include the LStream library, and we need to declare the namespace, and we need to define the entry function, the main function, and return a value in this function. And then we need to define the input numbers. We need to define 4 numbers. To make it easier, we use an array for these 4 numbers. We need to declare integer array of 4 elements, and then we need to define the array of cities. We use C for cities, and there are 5 of them. And then we need to do the input. We use the input stream to read in the numbers. So it's D0, D1, D2, and D3. And then we need to build the location of the cities. For the first city, we know the location of it is 0. Be careful that in C++, the index of an array starts from 0. So the first city, the index for it is 0. And then we need to go through the other cities. So we start from 1, and we should end before 5, and increase it each time. For each city, we need to calculate the location of it based on the previous city and the distance between them. Okay, so now just to verify that if I is 2 for the second city, we use the location of the first city and the distance between the first city and the second city, and that's for the second city. For the third city, this I is 3, and then we use the location of the second city and the distance between the second city and the third city. So that looks correct. And now we know the location of each city, and we can calculate the distance between any two cities. Calculate distances, and as we said before, we need a loop through the city list. And for each city, we need to loop through the cities again. So here we need to calculate the distance between any two cities, and we use distance for it, and that is the distance is C, that's the city, and CI minus CJ. And here for the first city, 1i is 0, that's for the first city, and j will go through 0 to 4 to calculate the distance between the first city and our cities. Looks like we're doing correct. Just keep in mind this distance might be negative depending on how you calculate the distance, but no matter how you calculate, there are always some negative numbers, and here we need to make sure it's positive. So first we check if the distance is negative, and if it is, we change it to be positive, and then we use the output stream to output the distance number and an extra space to separate the numbers. And so this is to calculate the distance between any two cities, and after the calculation is done for one city, then we need to get a new line. So here we output the end line. So after these two loops finished, we should have the distance table. And now we need to test it. Set a breakpoint here. Take the sample input to do a test, and we need to give it 3, 10, 12, 5, and we got the output matrix, and we can see 0, 3, 13, 25, 30. So the first line looks correct. If you check every line, they are all correct. So this is how we solve this problem in C++. Please let me know if you have any comments or questions. I hope you guys like this video. Please subscribe to my channel. I'll see you soon.